All right there, Latin 3 and AP. Here we are, the final book of, well, it's not the final book, but it's book 1, chapter 7. In the AP curriculum, it's the final one from book 1 that you would translate. And then after that, I would tell you full on from 8 on through the end of book 1, you need to read it and summarize it. And by summarize it, I mean no more than like 2 or 3 lines, honestly, of like, here's what happened in each paragraph. Names and places, who did what, you know, that kind of thing. There are some really cool chapters in book 1, so I really strongly recommend you enjoy it. But it does help set a tone very much for what you can kind of then reach back and go, oh, okay, this is what he was getting at. And also, then I would also tell you to read all of book 2 and all of book 3 and all of book 4 from chapter 1 up to chapter 23, and again summarize all of those. And there would be a lot of time where you'd get to do that, and then we'd get moving on to the translations again. And this again sets the context for what you're seeing, because this is 4 years of conquest. So I didn't want you just to think it was a geranium in a flower pot. So, having said that, here we are, Caesar 1-7. When this, the arrival of the Helvetii in Geneva, which is the Allobroges territory, which are allies of the Romans, or at least people that are under Roman control, had been announced to Caesar, he shows up, that they, the Helvetii, were trying to make their way through our province. He, Caesar, hurried to set out from the city, or you could even say hastens. That sounds even cooler. Notice that he has indicative, present tense, and verbs having to do with speed and decisiveness, and just short. To hasten to set out from the city, Rome. And he, Caesar, travels by paths as long as he can to get to further Gaul, further Gaul, not hither Gaul. Which is, Gaul across the Alps, basically. And he, Caesar, arrives at Geneva. So in just quick sentences, he's gone from Rome to Geneva. Boom. Yeah. Or you could say from the Rome to the Gauls. From the province, he drafts as large a number as he can of soldiers. And there were altogether in further Gaul the total of 1 legion. And he orders the bridge, which was at Geneva, to be torn down. So quick, decisive, boom, boom, boom. Here we go, right? When the Helvetii were informed of his arrival, Caesar's arrival, or the arrival of him, they sent ambassadors, the most noble of their tribe, to him, of which office Nemeus and Verocloetius held the chief positions. Okay, so they're like the head ambassadors, who went there to explain that for them, the Helvetii, had in mind to make their route through the province without causing any harm, because they had no other route. They also, Nemeus and Verocloetius, asked that with his approval, it be allowed for them to do this. So I'd just like to point out, Caesar shows up and they stop everything, send embassies, and beg very nicely. That's some powerful stuff right there. Caesar, because he remembered that Lucius Cassius, the consul, had been killed and that his army had been routed by the Helvetii, and had been sent under the yoke. This is a Bronze Age traditional way of humiliating people. You basically march the whole army under a yoke. It's literally a yoke that you place, so it means that they're under your power. So the Helvetii embarrassed the heck out of a Roman legion. He, Caesar, did not think that the request should be granted, nor did he estimate, or did he think, that men of hostile disposition, if their route through the if they were granted the chance to make a route through the province, that they would refrain from doing damage and doing harm. Nevertheless, or However, so that a space of time could intervene, and I've never liked that Roman phrasing, but that seems to be their only way of doing it, while the soldiers whom he had drafted could be gathered, he, Caesar, responded to the ambassadors that he, Caesar, was going to take a day to consider. So he's being very clever here. He's like, yes, I am very strong, you know that, and you know that you should pay attention to me, etc. But I need a day to consider. And really what he's doing is he's buying time. So he went there without an army, basically. And he not only went there fast, and he went there decisively, he used his bluff skill, essentially, to hold them back. If they wanted something, they should return on the day before the Ides of April. Okay, that's April 12th. So that's the end of book 1-7. So he shows up, stops the entire thing, stops them from crossing over, cuts down the bridge. So now they really do have to maybe negotiate or make a decision right then and there. They're not willing to make that decision because they are just Gauls. And he bluffs them into waiting so that he's going to have soldiers brought up. What you're going to read in the next several chapters, as you summarize, is nothing short of genocide. And then he gets even worse, well, I don't know if worse is the word. Then he takes on the Germani and stops them as well. So it's a really, actually a really good story. It's very interesting. You see women having a role in the battles and stuff like that. And it all fits in with a theory that I have, and I could recommend a podcast to you on a geek history of time, where they talk about the real reason that the Romans had to fight the Gauls during the whole thing, why Caesar was up there. So anyway, if you wanted to, you could listen to that. In the meantime, make sure that all these translations are good, and also read the rest of book 1, read all of book 2, read all of book 3, and read book 4:1 through 4:23, and summarize it all. Okay, I'm gonna hit the button. Oh, real quick, by summarize, I mean each paragraph, each chapter you gets 1 to 3 lines. Just really, really break it down. What's the most important thing we need to know? And sometimes it's simple as like Caesar travels, but you mention where he traveled through or something like that. There's a wonderful one where he tricks the Gauls. It's fun. Anyway, there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. So yeah, when you summarize, that's what you do. All right, I'm gonna hit the button for real.